Good day and welcome back to the channel. So we are doing the full rebuild of the transmission in this video. This video is going to be extremely long. It's going to be long because I'm going to pack as much information in this as possible. So if this is a job that you're doing yourself, it is literally going to be a step-by-step from start to finish. And hopefully answering any questions you may have and showing every single step along the way. Everything from down to replacing seals, O-rings, to the actual clearances between the clutches, how to stab the converter, how to install a shift kit. So this is going to be everything. So like I said, this video is going to be very long, but hopefully it's going to be as informative as possible. I'm just going to say, please stick around, watch the whole thing, just because as much info that is going to be packed in this is going to be very beneficial if this is a job that you're doing. I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking in this video other than just what I'm doing and how to do the process. So we're going to keep it as short and sweet as possible, and hopefully if this is a video you're needing, something to help you out, this is going to be the one that will help you the most. If you want to see the exact kit, the tools that I'm using, that is in part one. That is just showing an unboxing, the kit that I've got for this. It came from Inglewood Transmissions, Limitless Diesel. This is their DIY rebuild kit. So it includes everything in it. And then I do have a few special tools that I'm using just to help aid this process and making it as easy as possible for me. I am working in a bit of a restricted space. I don't have tons of room, but we're gonna get the best camera angles as possible. So with that being said, let's go ahead, hop into rebuilding this Allison 5-speed 1000 series. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the output shaft nut. This is from Merchant Automotive. There is the part number for that output shaft nut socket. It's a spanner socket. And then we're going to remove 16 bolts here for this extension housing. When you remove these bolts, this extension housing is going to pop up from spring pressure. So we are going to go ahead and start getting started on this. As you can see, I have it on my engine stand and it has made a total mess, so be prepared for that. And we're in limited room in the garage, so excuse the messiness behind it, but I have it bell housing down, and like I said, we're going to be removing that extension housing first. So this is that output shaft nut. As you can see, the splines on this spanner socket, they fit right into that nut right there. So that is the only way you're going to be able to get that nut off. I do have a new one of these, so I'm going to discard this one. If you don't have a new one, hang on to it. Now we got to remove these 16 bolts for this extension housing. These are 15 millimeter. You can see that extension housing trying to pop up, and right there it popped up just a little bit. All of these bolts are the same. That is the 16 of them, and now we can remove that extension housing. So there's the extension housing. Right here is the shaft for your parking brake pawl. I'm going to set this up here on this pan that I got. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the spring right here for the parking pawl. You can actually just pick the parking pawl up. Pop the spring out of it. The spring is also in the case right here. Here is the parking pawl. I'm just going to set that on my pan. Here's the spacer going down for the parking pawl itself there too. At this point you can also remove the gasket for the extension housing because you're not going to need it anymore. And then we'll move on over to the extension housing for resealing it. So then we will remove the C5 apply piston. You want to keep note and orientation of your seals that are in here. Also cleaning all of this up. This dowel for your parking pawl can be suctioned in there. We'll just set that over here with that. So on your C5 apply piston, when you get it cleaned up, you're going to go ahead and get these seals off of here. You're going to put your new seals on. I'm just using a small screwdriver. You do want to keep orientation of the seals, how they go on. This one is just a big flat one. And then you also have this seal right in here. This is the one that you want to make sure you keep proper notation of the orientation of it. We're looking at the bottom side of it right now, so I will pull this out. My thumb is on this bottom side, and you can see that there is a lip and a groove that sticks up right here, and that groove is going to the bottom side of this apply piston like I have it here. So I've got the new seals in with their proper orientation. I'm just going to take a little bit of fresh transmission fluid and lube up where these seals go. And then I'm also going to wipe just a little bit on the seals as well. You want to do that ensuring that you got a nice slick surface for this to go into. You can see this here, that is going to go into this indent on that side for this C5 apply piston. I want to get it lined up and actually wipe my hands off real quick and then push this down. You're going to see it sit flush around the extension housing itself here. It's going to be sitting and recessed right in this area here. So we have resealed that. The bearings in here are good. You can replace those bearings if you want to. Those bearings did not come in my kit, but I did check the bearings and the bearings are good. So I feel comfortable with those. And now your extension housing is resealed. That is good, so we will move on to the next step. The next step we're going to do is we're going to remove the output shaft in the P3 Planetary, and then we're going to remove the P3 Sun Gear, and then we're going to remove the main shaft. So right here, this is your output shaft. That's where you took your output shaft nut off of. So I'm going to back the camera up a bit, get this all removed out, and set it up here on this pan. Here is your planetaries. And the next is our P3 Sun Gear. There is our Sun Gear. Here is the spacer that was under the Sun Gear. So I like to set stuff as it came out. And then you can go ahead and remove right here your main shaft. So I got a little bit ahead, but at this step you can go ahead and remove the park pawl, the park pawl pin. Once you get those park pawls removed, and the park pawl pin and the C5 return spring, that is going to be this right up top right here. So there's your C5 return spring. Then you're going to go ahead and remove the P2 planet and the C5 clutch back as an assembly. So just reaching down right in there like so. Here is the P2 planet. Then you can reach down and you can get to the C5 back. And you can remove that whole clutch pack as one. Next, you're going to come in and you're going to go ahead and remove the C4 snap rings. That is right here. You're going to use a flat tip screwdriver to pry this ring out. I need both hands, but you're just going to work it around to get the snap ring that is in the case right here. You're going to get that pulled out. Once you get that snap ring pulled out, you remove the C4 backing plate and then the P1 Planetary. So there is that retaining ring. There's a big, thick, hefty one, so be careful with that. And then right below this ring, you're going to have your second ring that is in here. That is a spiral lock ring. It goes all the way around a couple times, and you're going to do the same thing with the screwdriver to pry it out. And as you can see, this ring is already out, but I'm still working it around, and that's what I mean by a spiral lock. And this ring is directional. Once I get it out, I will show you. It can get mixed up. So here's that spiral lock. There's the start and the finish. So it wraps around there. As you can see right here, there is a little kick in that. Each end needs to be on the highest spot of that ring because it can, when you're pulling it out or putting it in, it can get flipped around and it is going to throw it off. So make note and orientation of that little kick right here in that ring, and that the ends have to go on the high spots of that kick. Now that we got that out, we can remove the P1 Planetary. Actually, I got a little ahead of myself there. We're not removing the P1 Planetary. So here's the C4 backplate. Just putting this in orientation on the bench as I've taken it out. We're going to go ahead and remove the C4 clutch pack. So next we'll remove the P1 Planetary. You just reach your hands right down into the center. There is your Planetary for that one. There is bearings on these. Keep note of the orientation of them. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the C4 clutch pack, because you can just get your hands underneath and you can remove the whole clutch pack as one. So there is the C4. And then we'll remove the P1 ring gear. And then here is the P1 ring gear. Now we're going to flip the transmission to get the bell housing facing up, and we'll keep disassembling. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove the oil filter. And then you're going to go, after removing the oil filter, then I'm going to remove 20 of the outer bell housing bolts, which are going to be these 3 outside, and then inside you want to leave the pump bolts. There's 10 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're going to leave those 10, but all of these outer ones, there's going to be 20, counting these 3 outside ones here. I'm going to remove all of those first. You want to set those to the side in one pile, and then these inner 10 pump bolts, you want to set those in a different pile because these have a rubber seal on them so you don't get them mixed up. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove all of those. Might need a dead blow to tap this bell housing up to get it off of here, but we're removing the bell housing. In here with your filter, you will have your magnet, so make sure you get that magnet off of your filter. And then all of these bolts are going to be a 15 millimeter. So for me, with these 3 that came on the external part of the bell housing, I'm going to set those off into a pile by themselves. And then the others that are the outer ones inside the bell housing, I'm going to keep those in a separate pile. Now that I got those off, what I'm going to do real quick is you're going to need an 1.25 inch socket. I'm going to remove the 2 fittings for the tranny cooler lines, and then I will come in and remove the 10 pump bolts. And I do believe I messed up. I didn't mention that these are not the only 3 on the outside of the bell housing. You do have 3 more over here on this side as well. So both on the bottom, you're going to have 6 total. I can come in and remove the 10 pump bolts. And all of these are a 15 millimeter. So on these bolts, as I was mentioning, you can see right down in here there is a rubber seal on them. You're going to need a little pick to get those seals out. So those bolts, you will be able to tell the difference because the others are not going to have a recess up in this flange right here like these will. But it's good to make sure you know which ones are going to need to receive the rubber seals. So the seal did pull off on this one, but you can see, as I was mentioning, you can see that recessed area in the flange of that bolt head. So now we have all of the bell housing bolts out, so I can go ahead and remove the bell housing. Like I said, it could be stuck on there. You may need a dead blow just to kind of hit it to pop it up off there. We'll see how tight this one is. So not too bad. Didn't need a dead blow. It did pop off. So now you can take your bell housing, set it off to the side, clean it up. You can clean it up now if you'd like, or you can set it off to the side, clean it up later. Now you can see your stator support, your oil pump, and all of this on here. So we will keep tearing down. So now we're going to remove this whole stator support assembly. You can just grab the shaft, grab it lower here, it will lift off. It is heavy, it's going to be full of fluid. So I'm just going to take it, basically just let it drain down the transmission into my drain pan. So now that we got the stator support here, go ahead and remove your gaskets. They probably will leave some gasket material behind. You are going to need to clean this up really well. But we're just going to get these gaskets removed off of here, and then we're going to also remove the oil pump. So we will come back to the stator later. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove this input drum. There is this plastic bushing here. I'm just going to pull it out. Basically just grab the shaft on this input drum and pull it straight up. And right there is your input drum. So that is now removed. I'll bring you guys and show you in here as well. We have another set of clutches and a backing plate and a snap ring. And we also have more clutches within this input drum as well. So I'll bring you guys in and show you. This is going to be the C3 retaining ring and clutch pack. So right down in here, we got another big snap ring. This is just a big one. It's not a spiral lock. We have the backing plate and the clutch packs below it for the C3. So we're going to remove those out of here. And then basically the transmission housing is going to be empty, except for the pan and the valve body. So here is the C3 retaining ring. Slide this out of the way. And now we can just reach down into the transmission and remove the C3 clutch pack. Right here you can pull the clutch pack out as a whole assembly. And there is your C3 clutch pack. Wipe my hands off here. I'll bring you guys in to show you the transmission housing. It's getting really stripped down now. Got a lot of parts out on the table, which is exciting. So let's take a look at it. So as you can see, here's the transmission housing. We still have our apply piston down in here, but it is very, very stripped down. We have a lot of the parts on the bench here, keeping track and orientation of everything. So that is one thing you want to do, have a nice, clean, organized work area. As you can see, the transmission has now been rolled over. We're going to remove the pan and the valve body. And these pan bolts are 13 millimeter. So basically the next thing we need to do is we need to remove the filter, we need to remove the wiring harness, and we also need to remove the valve body. We are doing that so we can get all that out of there so we can clean this transmission case. Later on we will be doing modifications to the valve body, putting a shift kit, installing that in it. So that is why we're disassembling this now and in this order. So the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing the valve body. You're going to remove the internal filter. You're going to come around to the back. There is 4 locking ears, as you can see right here. You're going to press those in, push this connector into the valve body. Then you're going to remove 9 bolts up front, 6 bolts in the back. That will remove the valve body. So I am going to get to that point. I will show you what bolt I removed to get this valve body out. Once I do that, then I will remove the valve body, pull the other PTO cover, and wash up this transmission case. The other thing is your apply pistons that are in here, the big seals. There's one in the front and one in the back. Pull both of those out and discard them. Okay, so for removing your valve body, you're going to have 9 bolts up front, 6 in the back. So looking at it from the front here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are the ones you need to remove. And then coming around to the back, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Removing those 6, you're going to be able to remove that valve body up out of there. I did push the plug in. You can see it right in the case here. So now I'm going to just basically remove this valve body, set it off to the side, get my transmission case outside so I can get it washed up and cleaned up, and then we will keep moving along on this build process. So with your C1, C2 drum assembly, you can take your old torque converter and use that for a support. It will hold this. So we're going to start disassembling it. First thing on it is going to be removing this snap ring on the top here, just like all the other snap rings that we've removed previously. So we'll start tearing this one down. So you'll pull this apart. You're also going to take this out. It comes out this back side here. You got to line it up just right. Just like so. You also want to inspect this for any kind of wear. You'll get burrs up on the top. There is a little bit of wear on this one, but it is not horrible because this gear that goes in here is a hardened steel, and then this plate is just a stamped steel plate, so you're going to get a lot of wear. But it is not horrible. It's not bad, but that is something you want to note and check. Next, you can remove the drum. Underneath that drum is a bearing here. You're going to want to remember the orientation of this bearing because it's going to get replaced. I'm just going to keep it on for right now. You can go ahead and remove your next drum. And as you're removing these drums, just inspect them, especially this outside one, for any wear. Next, you can reach in here, grab all these clutch packs, and pull them out. After you get those ones out, you're going to have an internal snap ring spiral lock right in here. You're going to need to remove it. So there's that spiral lock. Then underneath that spiral lock is another snap ring down in here. You're going to have to remove it. Once that snap ring is removed, you can reach down in here and grab this clutch pack and remove them. Next, you're going to want to remove the main shaft. So for me, the main shaft's down in here. I'm going to pull the drum up using your snap ring pliers again. There's that snap ring. Then you can go ahead and remove your drum off of the input shaft. Just like so. I'm going to set this up on my bench. And then right here, all we have left is the input shaft. So you're going to need this compressor tool. Put a little bit of pressure down by tightening it up. I know I did that off film. Then you got an internal snap ring right here. We need to pop that snap ring off now. Then you want to position your puller so it's not like mine and up against the snap ring, so you can work it around the outside of it. I can get to this side. So you can see I've repositioned this compressor. Got it away from that snap ring, so I can go ahead and work this thing around now, getting it out of here. There it is. At that point, now you can take the pressure off of the puller, or the compressor, it's not a puller. And taking a small screwdriver, you can come in here, you can pop that out. Then you got a smaller snap ring around the inside here you got to pop out. Okay, so I didn't catch it on camera, not gonna lie. Huge pain in the you-know-what. Best thing is if you can compress this, I will lift it out and show you, because that snap ring is very tight within here. If you can compress this far enough for that snap ring to pop out of all of these springs, it will come out. Huge pain. I know I didn't get it on camera, sorry about that, but this is the next piece that you got that you need to remove. And then getting down in here, you're gonna pull this piston assembly out. Just kind of work it out on both sides. Because so far, in this drum, nothing wants to be easy. So I'm just going to drain this back out in here, and then I will take this drum and drain it out. But as you can see on this piston here, you got an inner O-ring and an outer here, so you need to keep orientation of that. And we're going to keep tearing this drum down. I'm going to drain the fluid out of this because there's just a little bit in here. That way I'm not messing around in all the fluid. So further down in here, you got another big snap ring. So snap rings are the name of the game so far. The more training fluid you get on your hands or your gloves and your tools, the slicker it gets. And you can see this kind of popping up a little bit. And you get a screwdriver, kind of reposition the snap ring in here. Right there. You can hear the snap ring, you can hear it pop. So it has popped up a little bit. And then there is that snap ring. You can reach in here. You can pull that next drum out. And then you have another set of springs further down below that. So last in this drum, you got an outer snap ring that you need to remove, so you can pull this center section out. So that will be the next piece that we're going to remove in here. So once again, another snap ring. Here it is. It's tight to get down in there. It is a huge pain to get to as well. But it is out now, so we can go ahead and pull this next drum out. So there's the next one. You can see you do have seals on this one as well, and those are all going to be getting replaced. Now we have this completely disassembled, so we'll get it cleaned up, and we're going to start reassembly. So we're going to start assembling the drum. I'm just going to get some transmission fluid. I put all the new seals on, but just to lube these seals up, you're going to want something. You're not just going to want to put them in there dry. You're going to risk damaging a seal if you do it dry. On this inner seal right here that I'm doing, the lip goes down towards the bottom. You're going to want to make sure you know the orientation of that seal, so you're putting it in there right. On this center hub right down here, you do have that O-ring that is down there. It's a little brown O-ring. There is 3 grooves going from the top down. It goes into the third one. Now that I've got these seals lubed up, we will push this down in. Once you get that pushed back down in, you're going to put your springs in. Springs are going to set right there. A little bit more fluid for this drum here. Now both those are seated. You're going to come in with your big snap ring. You're going to put it down. There is that spring pressure, so you're going to have to push down on this drum. If you have that tool to compress the springs, you can use that as well. Now that we got this together, we're going to go ahead and drop the snap ring down in to get it roughly where it needs to be. And then we're going to go ahead and compress this again to get the snap ring to set into place. So as you can see, I do have that compressed, and we will be able to set the snap ring a little bit better. I will try to keep this at a good camera angle so you can see it as well. Right there, the snap ring set down in. Just double check your snap ring to make sure that it is seated good, and then you can go ahead and back off. Then you can go ahead and back this tool off. Next, we're going to take our big seal that went around on the outside. We're going to put that in. You're going to need it and your snap ring, and then some tranny fluid to lube everything up. Once you have everything lubed up, just take this seal, drop it down in. It's going to take a little bit of a push. For me, I'm just going to come in with a screwdriver and just push it down, making sure that it is seated where it needs to be. You want to be careful with the screwdriver. You don't want to slip off and damage the seal at all. So if you have a brass punch or anything like that, you can use that as well. You'll come in with your snap ring and get that set in on top of it to hold that down. And for me, I'll just come around the top of that snap ring. Making sure that it is fully seated. Next, we're going to go ahead and put in this next piece. Once again, lubing it up with transmission fluid. You're not going to use too much fluid in here, so don't feel like you have to go sparingly. Go ahead, drop this piece in and get it to seat. I'm going to come in with my dead blow handle. As you can see there, it dropped down and seated. So then go ahead and take your return spring assembly, drop it in, get the seal that goes in here. Same thing, get it all lubed up. When you get that seal dropped down in, you can see all around the top right here where the snap ring needs to go to drop that snap ring in. So we will get it in next. So I'm going to do the same thing with this snap ring. Just nice light taps to ensure that it is seated in there all the way. So for this return spring assembly, you have another snap ring that goes down to hold that in. You're going to have to use this compression tool again to relieve that spring pressure to install that snap ring. Positioning this tool correctly is the hardest part. That way you can get in there to get that snap ring in. But I do believe we're where we need to be. So that is now compressed like I'm needing it, and you can see that these little legs kind of gotten in the way a little bit, but we can kind of manipulate those to get this snap ring to go in the way we need it to. It's a very tight area. This was a cheap spring compressor that I bought off of Amazon. There's probably better ones. I do fight this one quite a bit. But basically, you're just going to walk that snap ring around like that. Kind of fighting it. It is a tight area. This is probably one of the harder snap rings. I'm just going to stop the camera here so I'm not eating up a bunch of time. But that is the gist of what you got to do in this area right here for this snap ring. Okay, so I finally worked that snap ring around, got it seated in there. Like I said, it is kind of a pain. This is a cheaper puller, so you're fighting a hard spot with a really cheap puller. So, but I mean, it does work. It does do the job. Am I ever going to use this puller again? Probably not, unless something unforeseen happens with the transmission, which I definitely hope not. But that's why I went the route that I went with this one. But as you can see, I went ahead, I let up the spring pressure. That snap ring is right here, holding this retaining ring in. So from this point, we are going to install the main shaft. Put the snap ring on it, get it locked in. At that point, you can use the old converter like I showed taking it apart. We're going to get ready to start soaking some clutches, stacking some clutches, and getting everything else put back into this hub assembly. So next, we're going to go ahead and put our 2 new seals on our input shaft. I just have some assembly goo to hold those seals in place. So I'm just going to take these, and you're going to want to have these seals being held in place because that is going to be when you go to slide your converter on. And this assembly goo will definitely help hold them in place, protect them, and add some slickness to them for when that converter is going on. You can see I installed those 2 seals right here. I'm going to offset the openings on the seals. That's not a must or you have to, but that is just what I am going to do. I'm just going to go in here, kind of pack some of this assembly goo in around the seals. The stuff's not going to hurt anything. That's what it is designed for. As it heats up today, I'm sure this stuff's going to kind of liquefy as well. You can also use, a petroleum jelly like Vaseline or something like that if you would prefer. Or you can just pick up some of this assembly goo. So as you can see there, that's all I'm going to do is just put that in to hold those seals in place. And then I will take the input shaft, we'll slide it up through here and install our snap ring. So we've got it slid in. Then we will take our snap ring and get that installed to hold that shaft in. Stand it up on end so some of the weight of the drum can push down the snap ring. I'm sure you guys can't see right now, but as you heard, that snap ring snapped into place. I was just tapping it with a screwdriver, but you can see the snap ring right here holding into place. We're going to start stacking C1 clutches. I'm going to do those dry, measure them out, and then I'll take them back out when I know which ones I need, and I will go ahead and soak them for 30 minutes. So I will get those out, get that prepped, and we will start on that. So I know it's kind of hard to see, but we got this nice thick one. We're going to start with it. We're just going to start stacking these C1s. So it is going to be that. Then you're going to go to an externally splined friction side down, alternating with an internally splined with the friction side down until all 16 of these are installed in here. And the one you're going to end in is going to be an internally splined. So we now have all of those in. You're not going to put the spiral lock in first, but you are going to take your backing plate, you're going to put it in, and put the snap ring in to check your clearances. So I've got them all stacked, got the snap ring in. You're going to want to pull the bottom plate up. And all I'm doing is basically just adding in feeler gauges to see where it is at. I have already pre-installed these so you don't have to watch me fumble through different ones. But you're going to lift this plate up and feel the tension. And that's what I have right here. So right here, I'm at 105 adding up these feeler gauges. The range for it, they say if you're within 70 to 105 thousandths, that's perfectly acceptable for this kit. Your target clearance is 85 to 105, so I'm right at 105. What I ended up having to do was take out this big back plate and put in a smaller one that was included in this kit because it would not fit. I could not get that snap ring in, as you saw me fighting with it, because it was so big. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this snap ring back out of here so I can take the clutches back out. Getting the clutches back out, I'm going to go ahead and start getting them soaking. I'm just going to let them soak for a half hour. Pull the clutches back out after they have soaked, and we will reinstall them in here. So I've got the C1 soaked. They've soaked for 30 minutes. So we will start dropping these back in the way that they were. Remember, your first one is an externally splined, internally splined, and friction sides go down. And your last one that you end with is an internally splined. So I'm just going to kind of straighten those up just a little bit. At this point I can drop on my backing plate, my snap ring, making sure that it is snapped all the way in, and then our spiral lock. The spiral lock, you're going to need to lift up this back plate. Just keep that plate lifted up and then start in the spiral lock. You'll see that spiral lock kind of snap in. I'm just going to go around with the screwdriver, making sure that it is fully seated. It's a bit challenging when you get a bunch of transmission fluid on your hand, but it is now locked in. Try to line those clutches up just a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and drop our drum on. That's not what he did. Thanks. With the drum, it is going to be kind of hard, so you're just going to have to kind of twist until it drops all the way down, splining up all the clutches. As you heard there, it snapped down all the way. So now that drum is installed. And we'll go ahead and install our bearing that I've pre-soaked in there as well. So once we have that bearing in, we're going to go ahead and take the hub. I've put some more of the assembly lube on there to hold that thrust washer in place. And then for the C2 clutch, you're going to start, I've already pre-soaked with a friction clutch material disc and then a steel disc. You're going to do that until you got them all in, and then you're going to check measurements. And then the last plate you're going to end with is a steel plate. There is an extra if you have to adjust for thicknesses. And then we're going to come in and now we're going to measure our clearance. What we're looking for, your target clearance is 65 to 80 thousandths. So anywhere within that range is acceptable. So that is our target clearance, and I will show you how to measure that. So I went ahead and I put this top snap ring in to measure. I've got 70 thousandths worth of feeler gauges here, so I can slide those under right there. That is good. We are at 65 to 80 thousandths is what they are stating that they want within their instructions. So that is where we're at. So now all we gotta do is pop this snap ring back out. And then once we get the snap ring out, we can go ahead and put our P1 drive flange back on. Speaking of the P1 drive flange, real quick, it is important to clean everything up. When you clean stuff up, you want to inspect. Earlier in the video, if you remember, I said my P1 drive flange is fine. Well, my P1 drive flange is not fine. Hopefully, I'll be able to zoom in so you can see the wear on the inside of these teeth. It does have burrs around. You can hear my glove catching them. So it does have excessive wear on the insides of these teeth all the way around, creating some slop. So with that being said, I went ahead and ordered another drive flange because that one is shot and it needs replaced. You don't want the slop. So this is the new updated style. It has holes in it because everything, I believe from 2007 and on, I could be wrong, don't hold me to that, has these holes in it. Those holes, there's a lot of different debate on them, what they do. You can get more oil to clutches, but one main thing that it's doing is it's basically removing some hydraulic drag within this drum assembly. So I'm not saying, oh, this is an upgrade, but that is what you're going to get, and that is something to note. So if you have to order one, that is what your drive flange is going to look like. So we're just going to go ahead and install the snap ring back in. And at this point, our C1, C2 drum is now done. We have our C1 and C2 clutches in and at spec, right where they want them. And it is completely assembled with new bearings, new clutches, and it is good to go now. So the next step is going to be taking the stator and the pump off, inspecting the pump to make sure there's not any wear. So you got 5 bolts around the backside. You're going to want to support the pump from the backside as well. We're going to be doing some modifications. Actually, before I take that off, we're going to be doing some modifications to the stator as well. That'll be coming a little bit later. But right now, we're going to take the pump off, and I'm going to show you what to inspect and what to look for on that. So you have your thrust washer right here. So take that off, set that to the side, and then remove the 5 bolts. Noting that these 2 top ones are a gold bolt, these 3 bottom ones are a silver. And as you can see right there, it'll all just kind of come apart. So right here is the stator. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing some modifications to that, but not right now. I'm just going to set a few of these things off to the side so they're not in the way. We're going to get more oil on here, but I like to try to keep as clean of a work area as possible. So right here is your oil pump. You got this back plate that will come off. There's a little hole in the side there. You can kind of get under it. The oil sticks it together. And then looking right down in here, this is your gear-driven oil pump. So we can remove the inside gear, which is right here. Be very careful not to drop these. You don't want to drop them. They're a very hardened piece of metal. If you drop them, damage is going to occur. But you're going to inspect the teeth in here for any kind of wear. Also, I forgot to mention with the back side, got to clean all this up more than what I'm doing now, but you're going to check the back side of this plate for any kind of abnormal wear, just inspecting that pump. Pull out your outside gear here. And same thing, you're going to want to look at all the teeth on the inside here to inspect it for any kind of wear in that as well. There is a mark at the top of this gear. It's just a little dot. You want to keep note and orientation of that. And same with this gear, there is a dot at the top of it as well. So when you put those back together, those dots are going to line up with those dots looking like that right there. So at this point, you just want to take it, get everything cleaned up on the oil pump. If everything looks good, then put your gears back in and put the back plate back on. So we're going to start with our C3. We're going to do the apply piston. in the back, you can see there is a little hole. That has to go at the 12 o'clock position, so straight up at the top of the transmission. I'm going to just go ahead and dip this in some transmission fluid to lube it up. Also a little transmission fluid on my hands down inside the case for when we slide the supply piston in. That way we get a nice lubed up surface for it. So making sure that that is at the 12 o'clock position, we're going to install the apply piston. And then just push it down. So the apply piston is now installed. So now we're going to install a return spring cage. And then we want a 98 thousandths steel plate. So we're going to install our steel, alternating with a friction. And we'll just keep alternating. Now that we've got all those installed, we're going to go in with our backing plate, put the snap ring in, and check clearances. And we're going to go ahead and install the snap ring. I've got the snap ring in, and I've got 67 thousandths worth of feeler gauges, and that is very snug with 67. So it's probably right around 67, 66 thousandths. And your clearance is 60 to 70 thousandths, so we are right within spec. So we're right at where we need to be. So now we got that in, double check and ensure that your snap ring is seated all the way in. And then you can grab your C1, C2 clutch drum, and we'll put that in. Setting that in, we will get ready to start putting on some gaskets. And at this point, we're ready to start putting the bell housing on. So we'll need our gaskets, but before we do that, we need to do some modifications to our stator. Then we'll get the stator on, bell housing on, we'll get the transmission flipped over and keep going on the backside. Okay, so on our stator, we're going to be removing our main regulator valve. You can see with the stator in this position, you have a flat spot here, here, and one back on the right. This one is your main regulator valve. We're going to remove it to replace the spring. There is a shim. We're not doing the shim. This is for the Ratio Tech kit. There's 3 other springs for the shift ones that we'll be changing as well. I have just kind of a wood clamp with 2 small sockets, but basically you can compress that spring pressure, get a magnet, and then pull the pin. So we will pull that pin, we'll release the spring pressure and replace that spring. So there's going to be a lot of spring pressure on here, and this clamp doesn't release slow, so hopefully it doesn't go shooting too far. Working it out slow like that. You're going to have a plunger that goes into the back of the valve. Just going to wipe that up, clean it down. And then right here you have your spring. This spring is going to be getting replaced with a larger orange one in this kit. And then inside here you have your main regulator valve, which is this right here. So here's the difference in the 2 springs. This is the old one. We'll be putting the new one in. So you're basically going to just go ahead, put the plunger in there. I went ahead and cleaned up the valve, the spool. We're going to just install that back in. Making sure that it moves freely, and which it does. We're going to go ahead, slide that back in, and then this is going to be the part that'll be a little bit interesting. But same thing for compressing it back into the housing. I'm going to use this same clamp. And once that is pushed in, I will take the pin and drop it back down in. Once that pin's dropped back down in, you can loosen that up. And that spring is now installed. Okay, so the other thing I just did is I pulled off, there's 2 seals that go on the front, 3 that are on here. We're going to replace those with new ones. So just take those, slide them over. Be somewhat easy with them. Once we get these into place, I'm going to cover them with TransGel, the assembly lube. These back ones do have like a little lock in them, so slide those on. And since I didn't show where I took these off, you can see the orientation of where they go when I put them on. Next one will go there. I am going to just space the openings. You don't really have to because they are overlapping and they do seal when you compress them together, but I will go ahead and space those. So you can see the location of all 5 of those. I'm just going to take a little bit of the assembly lube, pack it down in, and just cover them all with this assembly lube to protect them and help ease of installation. So I've got those all covered up in the TransGel. There is a couple spots that we're going to have to enlarge some holes on the stator plate, and then we can get the stator and the oil pump bolted up to it. One other thing I'm going to do, something super easy, it's not hard, but is the O-ring on the oil pump. I'm also going to change it out, so just pull it off and throw your new O-ring on there. And I will also use the assembly goo on that O-ring just to help hold it in place and give a nice slick surface for it to slide in through the bell housing on. Went ahead and slid a new O-ring on. I popped out the old seal. We're going to replace the seal in the front of the oil pump. I just got a dead blow is all I got right now to use. So I'm just going to get the seal, go around it lightly, getting it started, and then get it hammered the rest of the way in. So right here on the stator support plate, per their instructions that I can show you, they show you which hole right here to drill. So to make it a little bit easier for you, this is the orientation of the stator plate, and I marked it right here with a Sharpie around it, and that's the hole that you're going to enlarge with the drill bit that they provide. Once you get that hole enlarged, you can go ahead and start bolting up stator, oil pump, getting gaskets over onto the transmission, and getting this bell housing bolted down. So oil pump's checked out and good. Stator plate, we have enlarged the hole that they've mentioned. So I'm just going to go ahead and take the stator plate, drop it down on the oil pump. Your 2 dowel pins will come through right here. And then we're going to go ahead and get the stator bolted up. So I'm just going to take the stator, ease it down through the oil pump, just like so. I'm going to bring everything up, drop a couple bolts in, tighten it down, then we'll flip it over, get these bolts in and torque down. We'll just run these up real easy. We got that bolted down. So these will torque to 20 foot-pounds. Now that I got those torqued, I'll take a little bit more of the assembly lube and just smear it around down in here for the thrust washer so it has something to grab a hold of and it won't fall off. Now I'll take the thrust washer and just drop it down into place, kind of sticking it to that assembly lube so it'll be stuck down in there. Put just a little bit more over the top of it. and it'll hold it and prevent it from falling out when we pick this stator up to install it on the transmission. So now that we got the stator assembled, we're going to go ahead and put our gasket on the housing. This is our bottom gasket, making sure everything lines up, all the bolt holes. Then we're going to take the stator and put it on. Being careful because there is a lot of seals on here. You don't want to mess any of them up. Lining everything up, just ease it down nice and slow. Once that's on, we will get our next gasket for the outside. We'll drop this gasket on. I did already install that O-ring there, so it's a little bit hard going around it. But go ahead and drop that on. I am going to hit that O-ring with a little bit more assembly lube since the gasket could have wiped a little bit of it off. And then we'll grab our bell housing. And I will also put a little bit of assembly lube on the inside of the bell housing that is going on over this O-ring as well. So as I mentioned in the bell housing, I'm just going to do a nice light layer of this assembly lube, assembly goo as it's called, in here, just so it has a nice slick surface for that O-ring to go down over, and we won't risk damaging it. So then go ahead and take your bell housing and drop it on. Might take a few taps. I'm just looking around the outside where that stator plate is, and it is down all the way. So now with all of your bolts, I'm going to do my interior bolts. If you remember in the beginning, those have O-rings on them. I'm going to go ahead and put new O-rings on those bolts. Pretty self-explanatory. And then we'll put all the bolts in, making sure that our inner ones do have those O-rings, which you can see in here which ones those were. And we'll get all the bolts in and we will get them torqued down. So your inner bell housing bolts with the O-rings torqued to 32. And I'll just go across from each other. And then do the rest of them. So all the inners are now torqued, so we're going to torque all of the outers, and the outer ones torqued to 37 foot-pounds. Since I have all the inners torqued, I'm just going to start working in a circle on all of the outers. So now that everything is torqued, I'm going to go back around and recheck everything one more time. I'm going to start with the center pump bolts with the O-rings. Remember those torqued to 32 foot-pounds, and then I will up that to 37 foot-pounds and then hit all the rest one more time just to double check everything. Okay, so everything is now torqued. At this point in time, you're going to go ahead and install your two cooler fittings back in. Go ahead and throw your magnet on your oil filter and spin on a fresh new oil filter as well. Just get a dab of trans fluid that is clean in that pan down there because I'm assembling. Put it on the O-ring of your filter and then spin your filter on. And make sure your magnet is in there as well. This is an Allison filter. I know it is not red. I really don't know why it's black, but that is what I was provided with in this kit. So we've got our fittings in, our filter on. Now we're ready to turn it over and start on the ring gear and C4 clutch pack and all of that stuff. So now I've got the transmission flipped over. We can take the ring gear for the C3 clutches and drop this down in and start getting it to spline up and drop down through all the clutches. And it starts turning harder the further down it gets. Starts turning a lot harder. And you want to check and make sure that it is dropped all the way down. If you pull it out, you can also see if all of your clutch packs are lined up, which mine are. I can feel it drop all the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop my ring gear back in. Your apply piston for the rear is the same. It does have a hole in it, so that's going to be your 12 o'clock position. I'm just going to run mine in my clean trans fluid down here. And then drop this in. So now we're moving on to the C4 clutch pack. I do have them in here. Your target clearance is 60 to 70 thousandths. I will show you how these are stacked in here. They are dry. I've not pre-soaked them. I have put them in there. There's going to be 6 steels and 6 friction clutches. I do have 60 thousandths in feeler gauges right here. So 60 to 70 is what they're saying. And I can get that 60 in there. It's not too loose. You can't rock it back and forth. And that 60 fits perfect. So it is within spec. They say to start out with a 98 thousandths steel plate. That is on the very bottom by the springs. So I'm going to pop all this out and I will show you what this looks like down in there. So popping that spiral lock back out, you're going to see we have the backing plate. We've got a friction. Steel, friction, so we're alternating. So this ends with a friction and it begins with a steel. I'll show you that down in here. And that steel that I used is at 98 thousandths. I mic'd that out. You want to do this dry like these are. Now that I know what I need for my steels, I don't have to add any thicker ones or thinner ones. Right where I'm at is where I need to be. I will start soaking these for a half hour. So you can see this is my 98 thousandths right here that I put down in here. So right there is my 98 thousandths. That's what starts my clutch pack. So steel, friction lining, steel, alternating until you end with a friction lining. I do have my apply piston down in there already. And then I also have my return springs, my return spring assembly down in here as well. So I'm going to leave these in here because I don't need to soak those. I know the clearance is what I need, so I'm going to start soaking my clutches. And we'll keep assembling in here until I'm ready and these clutches are soaked for a half hour to put them in, and we'll finish building the tail end of this. Next, we're going to take our Planetary that has this little plastic peak washer. We're going to slide it off. Included in the kit is this metal spacer. So you're going to drop it on first, and then you're going to go back with your plastic peak washer, making sure that these ears are going down into the Planetary here. And that is going to go on. So you got to space this out because the clutch pack is going to have more clutches in it. It's going to be thicker. So that's why you're spacing this out. You want to just take a little bit of that assembly goo, kind of just pack it in around this. That way it holds it into place because we are going to be dropping our Torrington bearing in. And then also after we do that, we're going to put this Planetary in. The purpose of that assembly lube is to hold those together because when we flip this upside down, you don't want them falling off. Now we'll take our Torrington bearing. We will put that down in there. You can see this blue faces up. You want to make sure that you have these in the right orientation, and that bearing has been soaking in ATF. Then we're just going to flip this over and drop this down in. It'll be a little bit challenging because you got to get all these planetaries to line up. But just like that, it dropped down in, and that's what we were looking for. We also have one more bearing that will drop in onto this top plate right here. Now that we got that bearing in, our clutches are still soaking. They need just a little bit more time, and then we can go ahead and start dropping our clutches in, and then the pressure plate and snap ring. Okay, so our clutches have been soaking for a half hour. It's time to go ahead and start stacking them in. Remember, it is steel first, and then a friction. And then a friction. You're going to have 6 steels and 6 frictions, and go ahead and just get all of those stacked in. Then you'll be ending with a friction. Now the tricky part is you're going to do your spiral lock first and then your snap ring second. So getting the spiral lock down in here and then compressing the spring pressure can be a bit challenging. Once you get that spiral lock down, then you're going to come in with your regular snap ring, and you're going to get this one in. This is a big one, and it is a little tough to get in, so just use your screwdrivers to walk it in. You can hear it locking and snapping in. And then for me, I'll just take my dead blow and just go around and tap it. Just to make sure that it is fully seated, and which it is, you can see it in there. Make sure that your bearing's in. Once it's in, go ahead and drop your next set of planetaries in. Make sure it seats all the way down. Then we'll take our another bearing that's been pre-soaking. This lip goes to the upside. Drop that down in there. Then we'll go ahead and take our intermediate shaft. We'll drop it down in. With our sun gear next. And then a spacer. And then our next sun gear. And another bearing that's been pre-soaking. You can see this one has the marks up towards the top. Now we're going to go back in with our C5s. So bottom apply plate. And then just start stacking clutches just like normal. So this C5 is using the same clutches that were in the transmission already. I did inspect them. They do look good. There's nothing concerning with them. A lot of kits that you get are going to reuse the C5 unless you buy the C5, but a lot of these kits, you're just reusing that C5. Under return spring assembly, there's a little tab right here at the bottom of the transmission is where that goes. It sits down in there just like that. Double check, make sure you installed that bearing, and then grab your last set of Planetaries and drop that in. This is the old output shaft nut. I just put it on there to hold the output shaft in place. So I'm going to take that off, discard it because I got a new one. Then we'll assemble our parking pawl. Make sure that this is up towards the top. Just drop that in. We are replacing the parking pawl return spring here. So I've got a new one. And we'll just press that in right there. And then take the parking pawl, hook up the return spring. Drop it in right there. Take your pin. And then drop your pin right down into the case. Just like that. You're going to want to make sure that the parking pawl is engaged. That way this can't turn for when you torque the output shaft nut. So that is in. Now all we got to do is the rear extension housing. Now we'll just take our extension housing gasket, drop it into place. There's a little dowel here, and you can see I got it in the wrong hole. So just drop it in. Make sure that everything lines up as it should, just like this one does. And then go ahead and grab your extension housing. Remember earlier in the video, we went through this and did all the seals. And then take this, you're going to drop it down on. It's going to sit up off here a little bit. I'm going to get down a little bit lower just to make sure that my parking pawl pin is in and that everything is lining up like it should. And it is. So that is going to sit up a quarter inch up off of the transmission. So go ahead and get your bolts ready. We'll drop all the bolts in and we'll torque those down. I'm just going to drop all the extension housing bolts in. And then I am going to tighten probably about 4 of them down, crisscross, just to make sure that this extension housing will go down evenly onto the transmission and then tighten up. I like to start all my bolts by hand just to ensure that none of them are cross-threaded and that they're grabbing threads and feel good. All of these bolts are going to torque to 37 foot-pounds. And as I said, I'm just going to tighten one down by hand just a little bit, go the opposite side. Then I'm also going to go side to side here, drawing this down onto the transmission case evenly, just to make sure we don't have anything in a bind. And then once it's touching the transmission, I will go around, snug all these down, and then we will torque them to that 37 foot-pounds. So those 4 are now snug. I'm just going to visually check around the extension housing to the transmission to make sure that it's all sitting down flat and even. It is sitting down and even, so I'm just going to run all these bolts in. I'm not going to tighten them though. Now that I got all those ran in, we're just going to go around and we're going to torque all of these, and I said 37 foot-pounds. Now that I got them all torqued, I'm going to run around one more time just to double check the torque on all of them. And the torque's good on all of them. Now we can roll this up so the valve body that's not in there is facing up, and we can get started on the valve body and then get it back into the transmission and the pan on, and we will be finished up, other than stabbing the converter onto it, and then this will be complete. Then the last thing we need to do before we get this flipped over for the valve body is go ahead and put the output shaft nut on. Here is the one that I got from Merchant Automotive. As you can see, this is a genuine Allison transmission output shaft nut. So we're just going to take that, we're going to put this nut on, and then we're also going to torque it down. Of course, your blue Teflon locking ring does go towards the top, so we will just get that started. This nut is going to torque to 65 foot-pounds. I have my torque wrench set to 65 foot-pounds, my spanner nut socket that I also got from Merchant Automotive, and we will go ahead and just tighten this down and torque the output shaft nut. One thing that's also important is make sure that it's in park so the parking pawl is engaged, so you're not going to spin the whole shaft. Otherwise it's just going to be spinning everything inside while you're torquing this down, and you're not going to get it torqued down if it's not in park. So just check it a few times. That output shaft nut is now seated all the way down in and is torqued. Now we can roll the transmission upside down so we can get started on rebuilding the valve body and getting it put back into the transmission. So now moving on to the valve body, we're going to remove the harness. We're going to remove quite a bit of stuff off here, get it split, and do the modifications. For these two solenoids here with these red tabs, the bottom of the tab just pulls out a little bit and then just pull it up and it comes unplugged. So we'll unplug both of those. For these ones, there's just these little gray, and this one has a blue clip. So just kind of lightly, you can use a flat blade screwdriver just to lightly pry that out a little bit. You do want to be careful. You don't want to break these tabs. If you do break one, you're going to need to go ahead and get a new pan harness. So those are now unplugged there. We're going to go ahead and unplug our manifold pressure switch. And then we will unplug this one as well. We have this little clamp right here that we need to go ahead and unhook. You can just take your flat blade, come into the back right here, unlatch it, and it should just pop apart. Just like that. So now we've got everything unhooked. You got these two clips right here. Just use a little flat blade, pull these clips out. Your harness is going to fold out the side, and then underneath right here you got one more solenoid that you need to unplug. With that unplugged, our pan harness is out. We can just set that to the side. And now we're getting down to more things that we need to remove off of this. So next, I'm just going to pull these two bolts that are left right here. Pull this up out of the way. I'm going to set it to the side. We've got a bolt here and right here to remove this tube. Then you can come in with a screwdriver and just lightly put a little bit of pressure, and that tube's going to come right up. We're going to set it off to the side as well. We're going to go ahead and pull our pressure manifold switch. So just pull those bolts that are left on it. I'm just going to pull these bolts out, set them to the side right here. And we got one more bolt right in the back. So that is all the bolts for the pressure manifold switch. So here it is right here. You want to make sure that these O-rings are all good on all of these. Clean it up a little bit. Also clean these surfaces, but be careful with these surfaces so you don't damage them either. So we're just going to take the pressure manifold switch, set it off to the side right here. We'll go ahead and remove this next. And all of these bolts are an 8mm. Set that off to the side. Now we are getting down to the bare bones of the valve body. We are going to need to split this valve body. I'm going to leave these 4 bolts right here in and these 2 here. That'll keep it together until we're ready to split it. But I'm going to remove all the rest of these. And you don't have to remove all these in the order that I am doing, because now that we are down to this point right here, and it just kind of depends on what stage of your valve body you are at. But for me, I'm just removing those. So I can come in, I'm gonna remove these 3, These two that you remove, these solenoids are spring loaded, so you have to keep a little bit of pressure on this bracket, otherwise these solenoids are going to pop out. Another thing to note is these solenoids, you want to make sure that they go back into the same location that they were. You don't want to get them mixed up. For me, I just marked them briefly, but I'm going to go ahead and remove this bracket. I'm just going to hold it a little bit. Right there. So as you can see, you can let off a little bit. You do have this dowel pin that is going to help hold it, but you don't want it to pop all the way off. At this point, we're ready to separate this valve body. On this side right over here, you can get a screwdriver under this hole, just a little bit, and you don't need much. And you just kind of want to work around this, getting this valve body apart. Don't use tons of force or pressure. You don't want to damage anything. And as you can see, once you start getting it separated, it is going to make a big mess. Once you get that apart, you can go ahead and lift this top plate off. We'll flip it over. Still holding pressure on those solenoids. I'm just going to take a couple sockets to set that on just so it holds a little bit of pressure on that. Right here is our plate. We will be doing some modifications to this plate. We're going to be drilling it out. I will show you those holes. Then we also have a few valves that we're going to be adding some springs into and some different spools in them as well. But what I'm going to do first right now is I want to get all this cleaned up, drain this fluid into a drain pan so I have a cleaner work area. Okay, I've got everything cleaned up. One thing I do want to state and show is in this piece here, you are going to have an internal filter right there. You can see that there is some clutch material down in here, not a ton. You're going to discard this because there is a new one that you're going to use. As I mentioned, I got everything cleaned up. We are doing the TransGo Jr shift kit in here with the instructions and everything. I will just go over it. It comes with instructions, but on your center plate, you're going to drill 2 holes out with the bit that they provide. And I went ahead and I marked these holes. I have not drilled them out. I will drill them out. One thing you want to make sure is once you drill them, because the drill bit will leave a burr on the back side, you're going to want to hit that with a file. Just real easy, real quick. I can show that. That way if you guys need to do it. But I just marked those just for reference for me so I know which holes I need to do without looking a whole lot. First thing we're going to move on to is going to be the springs with the TransGo Jr. There is going to be a few differences, not a whole lot. It's just the springs that you use within the kit, because right here is the 2. There's the drill bit. Here is the 2 spools. You have a bigger spring and a littler spring. This littler spring out of the kit you're not going to use because you are provided with new little springs. They are the Mike L trim valve springs that go in here, so you're going to use his springs instead of that. But we're going to go ahead and pop these solenoids out. Remember, keep track of the orientation of them. That is going to be important as well. So I'm just going to go ahead, we'll flip this up. I'm going to pop, put a little bit of pressure, just like that, on those solenoids. Pop that plate off, and then you can take the solenoids and they will pop up. You might have to pull them out a little, just like so. So here's one solenoid, and I'm going to set the orientation of them on the bench. I know it is kind of back behind here. You can't see real well, but they're actually locked in there pretty decent. They normally like to just kind of pop out on you. So right down here, you're going to have this piece, which you are going to keep. I'm going to set that with this solenoid. As I mentioned, I know they are back here. It's kind of hard to see. I'm just going to pop both these pieces out. We're going to clean those pieces up as well. Down below that, you're going to have a spring. keep the spring with that. That is something else that you're also going to keep. And then this inner one is not going to have a spring. So now next down in here is going to be the stuff that we are not keeping. There is one of these spools has a rib, the other one does not. I will show you orientation for those as well. Then the next thing that you need to get out is right down below. You can see these two springs right here. You can just push these out the back side right here. And I'm just setting those back behind here to keep them in line. It's going to be your spool, a spring. These will get cleaned up as well. Now that we got those out, we can go ahead and dump what's in here out. So there's one, there's a spring. And if they don't want to pop out, you can take your screwdriver and you can come in. You can see right here, and you can be real easy and just kind of pop them out with your screwdriver. So as I mentioned, you can see this one does have the rib on it. That is your outside one. And now that we got everything popped out, you can see our solenoids, everything right here. This stuff is going to be discarded. You're not going to use that. This stuff here you are going to keep. You are going to reuse this stuff. So go ahead and get this cleaned up. Also get the housing cleaned up in here. I'm going to do that real quick. We don't need to clean on camera because that's just kind of boring. So let me get that cleaned up and then we will start installing what is provided in that TransGo Jr shift kit. So down here at the bottom is the two trim valve springs that are included in the kit that are the Mike L ones. As you can see, here is the smaller one. Just going to roll this ball down to the bottom here. There's a drill bit. So here's the ones that are included in the TransGo kit that you're not going to use, this little guy here. So I'm going to set that off to the side. So this is the spool valve without the rib in it. You can see there's not a rib in the center here. I'm going to go ahead and just set those two right there. Move the drill bit off to the side. Dump out the next. Once again, discarding or sliding off to the side the spring we're not going to use because we're using these two over here. And then here's the spool valve with the rib in the center that you can see. The one with the rib that is in the center is going to go to your outside. So we'll just set those down right here, get this plastic out of the way, and then we'll start assembling this. I'll grab one of these small springs, just put a little bit of that assembly lube on it, come in here and grab the little ball. You can see it right there. So this is the one without the rib, so this is the inner one. We'll just drop that down into the cup. The spring that they provide will go on the outside. And it doesn't hurt anything, so I'm going to go ahead and just put a little tiny bit of assembly lube on that. That way it will not fall apart. We'll take this one. As I mentioned, this is the inside one. So we will go ahead and drop it down all the way. Just to make sure that it's down there, I'm just going to take my little pocket screwdriver and just push on it so I can feel the spring pressure, and it is seated down in there. So next we're going to take the one with the rib, same thing, just put a little assembly lube on it, assembly goo, pick up that little ball, drop it down into the cup, a little bit of assembly goo on that big spring there so it'll hold it, and as you can see this is the one with the rib, so it's going to go in the outside. Drop that down in and just push on it to make sure that it is where it needs to be. Now that those are in, we can go ahead and take these and drop them back in to the housing. Just like so. And now we can go ahead and start with our solenoids. As I mentioned, you're going to reuse this spring, and this was in the outer one here. So we'll just drop that spring in. We will take this plunger that was in the outer one and we'll drop it in. This was the plunger for the inside one. There was not a spring on it, so you're going to go ahead and drop it down in right there. And then this is our inner solenoid. I did mark them. It's kind of faded a little bit, but we're just going to go ahead, take it, press it in. You want to keep just a little bit of pressure on them in case they want to pop out. And then here's our outer solenoid. and we're going to take it and pop it in. Holding both those in, we're going to go ahead and put the retaining cage back on these solenoids, which is right there. And as you can see, when you let pressure up on that, they will pop up. Put that back in, try to hold them again, making sure that none of these springs popped out here. Push that retaining cage back up where it needs to be, just like so, keeping pressure on it. And then I am going to go ahead and just set this down onto a socket like I had it last time, just so there's just a little bit of pressure holding those solenoids in. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the provided drill bit. We're going to drill those 2 holes in that spacer plate. Once I get those drilled, I'll come back and I will show you those holes and filing them down real quick. And then we need to get into this back part for the Reassembly springs that we're going to be putting in, because we'll be putting 3 of those springs in these spool valves back here. You can pull them all out, clean them all up, which I will do, but I will just show on camera replacing those springs. So as you can see, those holes are enlarged with the bit provided. They are substantially larger than these 2 small ones that they were. But if you flip this over, you can see right on the back side of the plate here, there is a burr. You're going to want to get rid of that burr, so just a flat file. You can file it. Of course, I am not going to do that over my valve body, but you're just going to file those down. Do both sides, make sure they're clean. I'll bring it back in and show you once I get that done. So as you can see, I used a file, knocked down the burr on both ends, went ahead, cleaned the plate up with brake clean again. Just make sure we don't have any files left on here or anything, because this valve body cleanliness of doing this job is very, very important. So I'm just going to take the separator plate. I'm going to go ahead, I know it's a bit hard to see, I am just going to drop it back onto that part of the valve body, because we are going to move on to this section for replacing 3 of these springs on this side here. These springs were provided in the Reassembly shift kit. So these are the 3 springs right here that you can see that will be getting changed and upgraded within this part of it. So next we're going to install these 3 springs. It's going to be these 3 holes right here. This is what goes into your gear selector in the transmission. On this 5-speed, it will fall out. If it does, not a big deal. You can put it back together. But for these, just take a small screwdriver, push in a little bit, a magnet. You can pull that retaining clip out. We'll just set it here. And then we'll get these spools out, get them all cleaned up, replace that spring. We'll also pull all the other spools out. We won't be replacing the springs in those. I'm just cleaning those up. Once you get those popped out, you can just come in here lightly with a screwdriver and just slowly slide back these spools. So you're going to have a little spacer there. And keep proper note and orientation of what went where. That way, when you go back together, you are ensuring that you're putting it back together correctly in the way that it's supposed to be. So there's that spool there. And we're just going to continue on getting everything out. There is another little spacer just like that right in here. That's what I am trying to get out. The spring pressure normally pops them out, but it could just be the way this is laying, so I might just kind of finagle it around to get it to pop out. So a little fighting, a little wiggling, I did finally get it out. So there's the spring. I've kind of moved everything off to the side. I took a little bit of a break just to start cleaning some of these up. Real quick, this is the one that hooks up to your gear selector. It did fall out. There's just a little flat spot in this pin that drops in. Very easy to put back in. It needs to come out anyway so I can clean it up. But I'm going to go ahead and just start working this spool out of here. And then right there it is out. Just a little brake clean. Just to lightly clean them up. Then I like to just kind of inspect them, wipe them down, make sure there's nothing there. Let the brake clean dry on them. So there is the 3 there. So we'll go ahead and start reassembling. Dropping these spools back in. I have cleaned the housing where these spools go. It's going to get these white springs. So that one just goes in right there. And then you got this retainer that you just drop the clip of the retainer in, which this one's a little challenging because you don't have that flat piston to basically hold it in. We will just come in with a bigger screwdriver so I can catch the top and the bottom. Got it dropped in right there. Make sure your retainer is all the way. These other two will be a bit easier. New upgraded white spring. The little piston. Along with your retainer. And then the last one that we just took out and cleaned up. Along with the spring. The little retainer. Or the little piston. Push that in. And drop your lock in. This is the shifting one that I was telling you about. So it just slides in. Take your pin. Flat spot goes in there. Now it's kind of hard to see because it's on the back side. Then you just push it in so that pin, there is a groove on this side that it catches in there. And then just make sure that it's in and it slides back and forth freely. I did pull these out and clean them. Everything here is good to go. So now we can go ahead and get this valve body back together and assemble it and torque everything down. But one last thing before we do that, we need to put our filter in. So it comes with a brand new little filter. Just make sure you get it dropped in. And now we are ready to go ahead and basically put this all back together. It just kind of depends on however you feel best putting this together. You can put this piece on top first. The only thing is that little filter there is going to want to fall out. Plus all your bolts screw down through here. So for me, all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this up since I already got the plate on. Keeping pressure on this plate for the solenoids. Just kind of turning it around, and then we will drop this together. Making sure all the dowels line up and that this will drop down nice and evenly, and then we'll start bolting everything up. So now that we got it together, I'm just going to go ahead and drop 3 bolts in here so I don't have to worry about this popping up or going anywhere. And then I'm going to take 2 more and put those right here. This will hold the valve body together. We will come back and we will torque everything, but first I just want to go ahead and do this. So we can take this and we're going to slide it into the trans just like this. But before we put the valve body in, I am going to go ahead and install my valve body harness. One thing I am going to do with this harness is go ahead and pop this O-ring off and replace it. I'm just going to put a little bit of the assembly goo on this O-ring and then also into the transmission housing so it has a nice slick surface for it to slide in so we don't damage the new O-ring. Just making sure that connector is clean. I'll just get a little screwdriver up under this O-ring so I can just basically get it up over these fingers. Work it around. And then just slide it in right where it needs to go. Like I said, just a little bit of the assembly goo. Just going to smear a nice light layer around this O-ring just to ensure that it is going to go into the transmission housing and not damage anything. So over on the transmission side, we're going to take this harness. I'm just going to drop this in right here and push it in, make sure all the fingers lock and snap in. Right there, pushed in. All these fingers are locked. You can push it in just to check, but that feels good. We're going to keep this slid up out of the way, and then we're going to bring our valve body in and get it dropped into this transmission here. With the valve body, one thing you do want to make sure is you're going to have to shift this up a little bit because you want to catch this pin right within that selector. So you can see I got it caught right in that selector there. I'm just keeping my finger on there just because that little pin does like to fall out, and it can cause a little bit of an issue if it does fall out. Go ahead, get your valve body lined up right there. It dropped it right down and in. Make sure that that pin is riding right where it needs to, and it is. So that all looks good. Can check. Parking pawl is working. But now I'm just going to start getting everything dropped on and into this valve body, and we will get it all torqued down. Always make sure everything will start by hand. Now I got all these bolts in, minus the parking detent, because you do have a bolt right underneath of it. We're going to get all these torqued down here, and then once I get these all torqued down, we'll drop the pan harness in and put that detent in. So I'm going to go ahead, run all these down basically by hand until they touch, and then we'll torque them. Okay, so we're just going to run through and torque everything. Like I said, these are going to torque to 9 foot-pounds. I'm just going to start with some of my center ones. And then I'm just going to work all the way around. Now that I've hit all the bolts, I'm just going to go over all of them once again just to make sure that they're all tight and torqued to where they need to be. So right there, they are all good. So we can go ahead and put in the detent and hook up our harness. Just gonna drop that in, start it by hand. Same thing, I'm gonna torque these to 9 foot-pounds as well. Those are now torqued. So the first connector you want to get is right up under here, because this one's kind of a pain to get to. So plug that one in first. Once that's plugged in, you can go ahead and roll your whole harness right up where it needs to be. And just make sure you get all of your solenoids and your pressure switch plugged in. Those are all plugged in, and then the last thing that you need to do is you have these clips that you used, well, that you removed to get this harness out off the valve body. Pop those clips in, make sure they're secured, and right there, our valve body is now back in. I'm going to go ahead and shift it just to see. Watching my pin, all that feels good. I'm just going to take a little assembly lube, go right inside the hole here and around on the filter. Go ahead and take your internal filter, make sure it's lined up, and then just pop it in. Now that is all done, the only thing we need to do is put our pan gasket on and our pan, and then torque that down. Then we'll rotate this transmission over, bell housing up, throw a quart of oil in the converter, and install the converter. And then at that point, we are done with the rebuild of this transmission, which makes me super stoked. It's all went really well. There's been a few snap rings and stuff that fought me a little bit, but nothing too major. But we're going to get the pan on first. Taking our new pan gasket, dropping it on the wrong way. Right there is the right way. So throw our pan gasket on. Then we'll take the transmission pan. We'll just take it, set it on. Get all of our bolts, drop them in, and then torque them down. Same thing with these pan bolts. I like to start them by hand to make sure that they are properly started before you go ahead and start wrenching them down, just to ensure that they are not cross-threaded or anything. All the pan bolts are in. These are going to torque to 20 foot-pounds. And I'll just run around it one more time. Pan's torqued on. I'm going to pull the plug, replace the O-ring under it, torque it to 25 foot-pounds. This part is now done. As you can see, I have the new O-ring on it. Like I said, that goes to 25 foot-pounds. Just a few other little things that you can do is throwing on the PTO covers, your dipstick, grommet. I have a new one. On the other side, there is a new grommet that goes in there. You have your plastic block that goes in on the side that your dipstick is not on. That's just the stuff that I'm going to throw on. I don't really feel the need to video putting the PTO covers on or those grommets in and the plastic plug. Very easy to do and self-explanatory, so it's not something that's complicated, so that's why I don't feel the need to cover that. Okay, so I've pre-filled my converter, put a quart of oil in it. I've got my T-handles. We're going to go ahead and get this converter dropped down on here. So the converter's in, it's seated all the way down. It's going to be this height right here down in the bell housing. You want to make sure that it is at this height, because when you go to bolt it up, if you don't have it seated down all the way and you go to tighten your bell housing bolts, you're going to put pressure on this converter and you're going to break something. More than likely, probably internal in the transmission. So make sure you have it seated properly. When you go to bolt it up to the engine, you can also check up through your inspection plate to make sure that it's not bottomed out before the bell housing is touching. But that concludes building this transmission, getting the converter in, and all of that. Super stoked. Can't wait to get it in the pickup, try it out, see how the transmission works. All right, so there you go. There is the full rebuild of the Allison 5-speed 1000 series. If this video series is something that you've looked at because this is something that you're going to be doing yourself or thinking about doing, hopefully it's been very helpful for you from start to finish to where we're at now. That rebuild, it does take a little bit of time, but like I mentioned in the video, clean workspace, pay attention to where you're taking parts apart, organization, it is key, but it is totally doable. It's not a job that is too hard. It just takes just a little bit of organization, cleanliness, and just attention to detail, and it is very easy to do from there. But like I said, hopefully this video was very helpful and informative for you. Thank you so much for stopping in and checking it out. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing to the channel. Click the bell, turn on all post notifications so you don't miss a future upload. Drop a comment down below if this video was helpful for you, if this is something that you've done, if there was something that I missed. I feel that I covered everything, but who knows? Maybe there's something that I missed. But I want this video to be as informative as possible for anyone looking for a video like this. So your comments down below, if there is something like that, is extremely helpful and beneficial for everyone else coming in to look at this video as well. But I want to thank you guys all so much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. And as I mentioned, thank you again for stopping and checking out this video, taking the time out of your day. And I will catch you all in the next one. And until then, take care.